Johnny Carson was the biggest star in America.
For 3 decades, Johnny Carson ruled late-night television like no one before him. Perched behind his Tonight Show desk, he made America laugh. Night after night, with effortless charm, razor-sharp wit, and a sense of control so smooth, it seemed nothing could ever shake him. Carson was more than a host. He was a cultural institution. At his peak, more viewers tuned into The Tonight Show than Monday Night Football, and an invitation to Carson's couch meant you'd truly arrived. But behind that calm, camera-ready grin, there were nights when even the king of late night couldn't fully disguise the storm brewing beneath the surface. To the millions watching at home, Johnny Carson appeared unflappable, a man whose quick wit and affable charm could diffuse any awkward moment, turn a clumsy guest into a punchline, and rescue a dead segment with a single well-timed eyebrow raise. Yet, what audiences rarely saw were the nights when the stage lights felt hotter, the clock moved slower, and the familiar confines of Studio One turned from a safe haven into a volatile arena. These weren't your typical on-air flubs or the occasional awkward celebrity interview. No, these were nights of subtle warfare, quiet showdowns, ego clashes, whispered insults, and unscripted moments that pushed Carson to the edge of his famously cool persona. Some guests came armed with oversized egos, others with unspoken vendettas. A few arrived with the kind of chaotic energy that disrupted the carefully orchestrated rhythm of the show. And in those rare, electrifying moments, viewers caught the faintest flicker of genuine irritation behind Johnny's polished exterior. There were nights when monologue jokes fell flat because a powerful guest had just upstaged him during rehearsal. Nights when Carson's pencil tapped a little faster against his desk as a conversation spiraled away from him. When a guest ignored a cue, derailed a segment, or took an unscheduled walk onto his sacred stage, it wasn't just bad television. It was a breach of unwritten rules in Carson's court. And for a man who prided himself on controlling the room, those breaches left marks. Some incidents sparked off-camera shouting matches behind closed dressing room doors. Others led to lifelong grudges and quiet blacklists, where certain names were never spoken again in the halls of NBC. In rare cases, a single guest appearance left such a lingering bruise that even years later, Carson would privately recount it to trusted confidants, with a half smile and a shake of his head. These were the moments that revealed not just the skill of a great host, but the burden of wearing the crown of late-night royalty, and how even legends sometimes found themselves holding back a storm behind a smile. Number 8. Frank Sinatra. The king meets the chairman. Johnny Carson built his career on timing, control, and the ability to turn even the most awkward moments into comedy gold. But when Frank Sinatra entered the building, even Carson's famously steady hand trembled a little. Sinatra didn't simply arrive at NBC studios, he descended, flanked by a small army of bodyguards, personal assistants, and sometimes even private detectives. His entourage would arrive hours before him, adjusting room temperatures, setting up teleprompters, and reserving entire wings of the building for his friends. NBC security didn't casually jot down his arrival. They logged it in bold block letters, like they were bracing for a royal visit. Carson, a man who liked things tidy and predictable, knew exactly what was coming. Showtime, but on Sinatra's terms. And while Johnny valued the ratings and prestige that came with having the chairman of the board on his show, backstage, it was a logistical and emotional headache. Frank Sinatra wasn't just a celebrity guest. He was an empire that moved like a traveling monarch. His advance team would arrive at NBC studios long before he did, adjusting the thermostat in his dressing room, tweaking the lighting angles, and even replacing studio ashtrays with his preferred brand of cigarettes. At one point, a junior staffer once joked that setting up for Sinatra's arrival felt more like prepping for a presidential visit than a variety show taping. Every producer on the lot knew the stakes. If a lighting cue was off by half a second, if a microphone crackled, or if a name was mispronounced by a nervous cue card assistant, there was no polite shrug or casual correction. No, That poor staffer would often find himself quietly escorted from the hallway by one of Sinatra's towering, stone-faced bodyguards. And it wasn't an idle threat. One infamous incident saw a junior producer reassigned to a distant affiliate station in Arizona for mistakenly calling one of Sinatra's entourage by the wrong nickname. It became something of a Tonight Show legend, a cautionary tale whispered to new hires. Carson's own assistants could always tell when a Sinatra night was approaching. The tension in the building would climb, and so would Johnny's alcohol intake. He'd pour himself an extra scotch before showtime, half joking to the writer's room, "Chairman of the board, huh? I still sign the network paychecks, at least until Frank decides to buy NBC too." The Tonight Show ran like a well-oiled machine most nights, but when Sinatra was in the building, it shifted into something else entirely. The air felt heavier. Carson, usually relaxed and quick on his feet, would triple-check cue cards and privately instruct bandleader Doc Severinsen to be ready for anything. It wasn't that Johnny disliked Sinatra personally. He admired his talent, respected his legend, and understood the bump in ratings his appearances delivered. But he also knew that no other guest could throw the show off its axis quite like Frank. And deep down, Carson resented having to play second fiddle, even for a man whose mere entrance could stop a monologue dead and trigger 40 seconds of standing ovation. One moment sealed their strange dynamic forever. In 1976, Carson was midway through his monologue, delivering a peanut allergy joke, when Sinatra strolled unannounced onto the stage. The audience erupted into 40 seconds of thunderous applause. Carson, blindsided, blinked through it, then deadpanned. "Do you need the whole show, Frank?" Sinatra winked. "Only till the band packs up." Viewers at home loved the spontaneity, but Carson saw it for what it was, a power move. The monologue was sacred ground, where the host set the night's tone. Sinatra had just taken a piece of it without asking. Carson smiled, steered the interview toward safe nostalgia, carefully dodging mob rumors and marriage scandals. The ratings soared, but so did Carson's blood pressure. Even off-air, the tension lingered. He once confided to a friend, "It's Frank's world. We just film in it." Number 7. Chevy Chase, the heir apparent who never was. If Carson had a gift for handling tricky personalities, Chevy Chase tested it like few others. Chase burst into the comedy world in the 1970s as Saturday Night Live's breakout star. Millions adored his deadpan delivery and sarcasm, but Carson saw something else, a challenge to his throne. It wasn't just that Chase was famous. Johnny dealt with big egos nightly. What made Chase difficult was how he carried that fame. His humor lacked the warmth Carson valued in his guests. Where most banter felt playful, Chase's jabs landed sharp, personal, even mean-spirited. The room's energy chilled when he was around. Carson could dance with sharp-witted personalities, but he resented when a guest treated his stage as a stepping stone. Industry whispers suggested Carson saw Chase as a potential late-night rival, and that made their on-air interactions strained, even icy. Viewers noticed the lack of chemistry. Carson's trademark playful spark never appeared. Off-camera, the silence deepened. NBC insiders say Carson once referred to Chase as "that punk," a rare flash of venom from the usually composed host. It wasn't outright war, but it was cold. Number 6. Fred Rogers, the gentle disruptor. When The Tonight Show booked Fred Rogers, it seemed like a harmless, heartwarming segment. The idea was to pair late night's sharpest wit with daytime TV's gentlest soul. A 5-minute chat, maybe a puppet or two. What could go wrong? Everything, it turned out. From the moment Rogers walked onto the set, the tempo collapsed. He strolled, paused, and softly greeted the audience. "Thank you very much, friends. I'm very glad to be here." The crew, unsure if he'd finished his greeting, delayed the applause cue. Carson tried to lighten the moment. He lifted his foot to reveal a pair of white sneakers. "Fred, I wore these in your honor." He grinned. Rogers smiled serenely. "That's very thoughtful, Johnny. Sneakers can help us feel ready to play. No punchline, no setup, just pure sincerity." Carson, sensing the segment drifting into treacherous waters, attempted to pivot. He reached for one of his favorite reliable moves, asking about fan mail. Surely, he thought, Mr. Rogers would have some light-hearted anecdote about bizarre letters or overzealous fans. Maybe a kid who sent him a crayon portrait of a dinosaur driving a trolley, something that could break the tension and cue a well-timed laugh. But Fred Rogers, ever the gentle soul, didn't take the bait. Instead, he offered a soft-spoken, carefully paced story about a 7-year-old boy who was terrified of bathtub drains. The child believed the water might carry him away, and it was through the power of make-believe that he overcame his fear. Rogers' voice was calm, his words evenly spaced, each sentence landing with the soothing cadence of a bedtime story. In the control room, panic quietly set in. The clock ticked painfully as writers began furiously crossing jokes off cue cards, realizing the carefully plotted show rundown was crumbling. Planned segments were now hopelessly behind schedule. The animal act meant to close out the night would need to be bumped or cut entirely. Associate Director Bobby Quinn tapped a stopwatch with increasing urgency, his finger hovering over the commercial cue button. On stage, Carson's smile tightened. The audience clapped politely after the story, unsure whether it was over or if there was a moral still coming. Rogers, unhurried as always, folded his hands on his lap, content to let the silence linger. For late-night television, where timing was everything, it was agonizing. Behind the curtain, even the seasoned stagehands started shifting uneasily, aware that the pacing disaster unfolding before them would be talked about in the NBC cafeteria for weeks to come. Carson, bound by an unspoken rule not to mock Mr. Rogers, stayed polite, sweating through what became 5 minutes of quiet reflection. The segment caused a dip in Nielsen ratings, but a flood of thank-you letters followed. Parents, staying up late at their kids' insistence, wrote in droves. Carson adjusted. Future Rogers appearances came during holiday weeks, with prop suggestions and backup musical acts standing by in case pacing lagged. But Johnny never quite figured out how to handle Rogers' disarming stillness. Number 5. Bob Hope, the scripted icon. Bob Hope was NBC royalty, and with that status came power. Hope's staff sent thick packets of index cards to Tonight Show producers days before his appearances, packed with pre-approved jokes, suggested questions, even camera cues for cutaway shots. For Carson, a master of spontaneous banter, it felt like trying to jam jazz riffs into a Sousa march. During tapings, Hope rarely made eye contact with Johnny. His gaze was fixed on cue cards. Even when Carson improvised, Hope ignored it, plowing through his scripted gags. The audience chuckled, but the spark wasn't there. Worse still, Hope relentlessly promoted his specials. During one appearance, he name-dropped Texaco 3 times in 7 minutes. Carson quipped, "Texaco gets more airtime than I do," but the frustration showed. Crew members recalled Carson backstage, muttering, "I'm the warm-up act for a subsidy." Despite flat segment, NBC kept booking Hope. Older viewers adored him, and his specials raked in ad dollars. Carson lobbied for fresher guests, but executives refused. As a compromise, producers paired Hope with high-energy second guests to restore momentum. Even then, the air chilled when Hope arrived. Insiders joked the temperature in Carson's dressing room dropped 10 degrees. Number 4. Charlton Heston, the lecture. Charlton Heston brought gravitas to the Tonight Show stage, but what worked in Ben-Hur didn't translate to late night. Carson preferred snappy exchanges. Heston delivered oration. A simple question about a chariot scene injury would detour through Heston's childhood on a horse ranch, Yale Drama School, the philosophy of risk in art, and eventually, 5 minutes later, arrive at the cracked rib anecdote. During commercial breaks, Heston offered historical footnotes and NRA museum invitation. Nielsen laugh counts plummeted. One 1987 appearance scored just 9 laughs, down from Carson's typical 30. Producers quickly realized they had a problem on their hands. Charlton Heston, while a respected Hollywood icon, simply didn't fit the unpredictable, fast-paced energy of The Tonight Show. His interviews felt more like masterclasses in classical theater and constitutional law than breezy celebrity chats. After one particularly ponderous appearance, where Heston quoted Shakespeare, referenced Plutarch, and worked in a stern defense of the Second Amendment, the studio audience sat in polite, exhausted silence. Behind the scenes, a quiet meeting was held. From then on, Heston's segments were strictly capped at 8 minutes. One epic story. No politics. No lengthy philosophical detours. A single anecdote about a movie stunt or a prank on set, preferably with a light punchline. Even then, producers knew damage control might be needed. So they started a new tactic. Immediately following a heavy Heston interview, they'd book an off-the-wall comic like Don Rickles or Rodney Dangerfield to storm in and blow the stale air out of the room. And it worked. After one famously humorless Heston appearance in 1987, the audience sat in awkward quiet as the band played out the segment. Moments later, Rickles burst through the curtain, took one look at the somber crowd, and cracked, "Who died in here?" The audience exploded with laughter. Pure, unfiltered relief. Backstage, Carson was so grateful. He cornered Rickles after the taping, clapping him on the shoulder and muttering with a grin, "Always follow Moses with mayhem." From then on, it became a kind of unofficial Tonight Show rule. If Heston was booked, Rickles would be kept on standby. And both men, in their own way, remained fixtures of Carson's reign. One delivering gravitas, the other detonating it. Number 3. Wayne Newton. The silent threat. Carson's monologue routinely skewered celebrity, but few took offense like Wayne Newton. The singer, who had invested millions in Las Vegas' Aladdin Hotel, bristled at jokes about his thick hair and flashy stage presence. Then, one night in 1980, Newton showed up unannounced at NBC Studios. Security cameras captured him marching down the hallway, silk shirt open, fists clenched. He stormed into Carson's office, leaned over the desk, and growled, "You ever call me a joke again? I'll show you the punchline." Carson froze. Newton left. That night, Newton jokes vanished from the monologue. When Newton returned as a guest, it was under strict rules. No jokes before or after. No veiled references. Carson never admitted fear on air, but insiders saw the shift. Number 2. Joan Rivers. The ultimate betrayal. Joan Rivers was Carson's hand-picked protégé, guest hosting nearly 200 times over 2 decades. He adored her. She sent him thank you notes, birthday cakes, and even called him boss. But in 1986, when Fox offered her her own late-night show, complete with creative control and a fat paycheck, Rivers accepted. Afraid NBC would pull the offer if word leaked, she didn't call Carson first. He learned of it on the evening news. When Rivers tried to phone, he famously told a technician, "I don't want to talk to her," and hung up. The next morning, her name disappeared from the show's booking sheet. She was blacklisted. Rivers' show fizzled. Her career faltered, and personal tragedy struck when her husband died by suicide. Carson never reached out. Not even Jay Leno, his successor, lifted the ban. It wasn't until 2014, with Jimmy Fallon, that Rivers finally returned. Number 1. Don Rickles, the wrecking ball. If anyone could rattle Carson and still be welcomed back, it was Don Rickles. Rickles' insult comedy pushed every boundary. He mocked guests, audiences, even NBC censors. In 1976, while guest hosting, Rickles accidentally broke Carson's prized cigarette box. The next night, Johnny halted the show live, stormed over to Rickles' set, held up the broken box, and confronted him. "You broke my box." Rickles feigned terror. The audience howled, but behind the laughter, Carson imposed new restrictions. Family-friendly jokes only. No chaos beyond agreed time. Rickles complied, barely. Stagehands joked that 1 Rickles appearance was fine. 2, too much.